Welcome to the Forest Lake Ranger Football Report. This is episode 6 of the 2025 season, and we're here to recap last week's game, look on to next week's game, and talk about just a few pointers in the middle. We had
Joel Geist.
You're Joel Geist. I'm Noah Casa. And we had a great game at White Bear, Battle for the Paddle.
It was a great
2025. Game. And the boys pulled it off.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very convincing fashion.
Yeah.
Which is what we needed to do.
Well, I mean, we can say it's convincing fashion, but a lot of that scoring was in the second half. Mm-hmm. It was a close game at halftime.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
It was a solid game. It wasn't one of those huge blowouts. Like there was, a little bit of turbulation. The offense kind of had some blips and blubs, but big plays were the thing. Big plays kept us in the game and really made big plays by both sides, defense and offense.
Yeah. And that's how a lot of the season has gone. We're a big play team, and
it was,
what can you say?
The defense would make a big play to force a stop or a turnover or something, and just that energy carried over. And there was 2 drives that were less than 3 plays. It was I think Durago's was 3rd down, I think.
Something like that.
And then Jurkovich's was 1st down just right away. And right after the big defensive stop, it was boom, points. Right after the defensive stop again, boom, points. So this
well, that's what we got to do. We got to jump on teams when they give us the ball back in a turnover on downs, or they're just punting it.
Yep.
You got to jump on it quick.
Right. And, that also forces, like, if you force them to say, hey, we can't give them the ball back, like they might be going for it on a 4th and 3 when normally they might punt it and try that, because punt returning did an excellent job. And also those big plays, that defense really pumps up the offense. And as soon as the offense comes in, they're looking to score right away once they get a turnover on downs or they get a punt.
Well, and that's the momentum shift when you get a big defensive stop and the offense can go out and just kind of play riding that momentum.
Yep.
I think it makes everybody play a little bit more free. And what happened on Friday is the product of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So passing percentage is going to go a little bit down as we dive into stats here. Connor, still pretty good game, 7 for 12, 70 yards and a touchdown. But it'll affect that the completion percentage. But like we've been saying all year,
completely unsustainable.
What he was doing in the best way possible is not sustainable.
Right.
It's just you can't go 100% on the season.
You can't expect anything in the 80% range. Like, hey, we're going to throw 80%. Some of that happens just because the offense is clicking so much and the defense is keying in on our running game so much that, hey, you know what? Most of the time the passes are going to be open a little bit. So yes, you can expect a little bit more than average, but anything over the 80% completion percentage is almost unheard of.
Yeah. Anamason did all right. I mean, 9 for 20 with 104 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. That was a big thing last year. He threw 1 touchdown, 3 picks to our defense. So I was kind of worried in that second half on what was going to happen with that, if he was going to start getting a little too free with the ball. And credit to him not doing that. I think they went pretty run heavy throughout the game against us this year. 14 carries for him, 16 for Brian White. But a great job of the Rangers completely shutting their run game down. They were averaging, I forgot where I got it in my notes, but they were averaging a fair amount of yards per game. I thought you said it was like
7 yards per attempt last week. But the biggest thing was they were closing down the edge very well. A lot of the yardage came up the middle. and that was mainly from Brian White, who was a big back, big bruiser, tough to take down, doesn't go down on first contact. Anima-san did a great job, when he was running, he could avoid the first tackler. But even still, with those problems for the Force Lake defense, they still really, they had most of the carries, and they were still right around 3 yards per carry. They did seem to put a couple of drives together, and it was just, hey, we're going to get 5 yards a clip, 5 yards a clip, 5 yards a clip. And then other drives, it was, hey, run for no gain, run for no gain. So like a couple of those drives they put together that were a bulk of that yardage that Force Lake just had a problem stopping that drive. And then they bottled him up for the rest of the time. And then also Brian White, in the middle of the third,
he did get hurt.
He went down with an injury. So
yeah, but I'd say in watching the game, I think those drives where they were going 5 yards a clip, 5 yards a clip, 5 yards a clip, somewhere around the 5 play mark in those drives, somebody would break through and we'd have a 10 to 15 yard loss that brings the yardage total back down.
Right.
And so I think that's why they ended up averaging about 3 yards a carry. The Rangers, on the other hand, averaging almost 10 yards a carry. And I wrote down here, it's been all about Mac for all of last year. Mm-hmm. And into the beginning of this year, but with his injury and Kevin stepping up and toting the rock for us, we're starting to kind of get a little bit of a two-headed monster here with Durago and Jurkovich. Hand it to either one of them and see what happens. Durago went 5 for 33 and 2 touchdowns, and Mac went 9 for 77 and a long touchdown. A good amount of that yardage came on that big run. Both of them had a good amount of their yardage came on their 2 of their touchdown runs. But then all of a sudden, DJ Westman working his way and getting north and south. He had a huge run, ended the day with 2 attempts for 70 yards. Connor, pretty effective with 6 for 29, but surprisingly no touchdowns on the ground for Connor this year. Normally we get down into that inside the 5 and we kind of run the QB power to the left side behind the heavies, and we didn't see that at all in the White Bear game.
I think that more so is, hey, Connor, when Connor rushes, most of it is an RPO or a pitch option, and he's able to pick his hole. I think Brad Beeskow is a little bit on the thought process that, hey, let's not make our quarterback put in those huge, in those spots where you're going to take big hits. Mm-hmm. We have guys that do very well at avoiding those hits or making them pay for those big hits. Durago goes in there and he runs hard. And if you're going to go and make try and get a big hit on Durago, he's going to punish you. And, it's going to be, Clash of the Titans there when 2 big guys try and take Durago down, because they're gonna take a hit too. And I think Connor has done a great job at, hey, I'm just gonna take this quick 5. I'm not gonna put myself in a really weird spot. And he has gotten some of those big runs, but once he gets to the second level and that offensive line is doing a great job engaging the linebackers, that's where he can get those 10 and 15 yard runs. And, then your safeties start to come up. Okay. Hey, we got the first down. Not a big deal. I'm not gonna try and, bust a knee or, put my shoulder down into a safety to get hurt.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a big part of Connor's game. Last year, I think he kind of felt like he had to get those yards. Now he knows that there's other guys that, hey, you know what? We'll get the first down and, let's move on to the next play. And what you're talking about as far as the on White Bears rushing, that just goes into the big play thing. And this is a big play defense. And, the force leg defense kind of is like, okay, we'll let them get a couple of yards here, a couple of yards there. As long as there's people there to wrap them up, eventually we're going to get the big stop. We're going to get a sack. We're going to get a big tackle for a loss. And it's the same way on the other side. Hey, we're just going to keep running it. We're going to run it 15 times in a row. We might get 3 yards this time, 3 yards this time, 3 yards this time. Hey, fourth and 1 or whatever. Still get 3 yards, but eventually one of those is going to break. And, one of those is like DJ Westman. He had a great end around that, he had a lot more of that first burst when he put his foot in the ground and went. And I think that's what really sprung him on that one really long play.
Yeah. And I think Connor's effectiveness in the passing game all relies on that lulling the defense to sleep with the run, 3 to 5 yards a carry. Like you said, safeties kind of come down and maybe cheat down a little bit. Not even the coach telling them to come down, but the safeties are just expecting it. And then I think I'd have to go back and rewatch everything and look, but I'm fairly sure at least 2 or 3 of Micah's big touchdown catches, and maybe even one of Renfield's this year, have been on a play action, getting the safeties to bite down, especially Renfield, splitting the safeties like that. You know that the safeties are starting to play up, and B-Sky knows how to make them pay for it. And I think the play calling has been exceptional this year, with just that chess game of, we see your safeties starting to cheat down. Why don't you bring them down another yard or 2, and then we're going to take the top off.
Well, and that's the other thing. A lot of his rollouts, since Connor Johnson has the ability to get those quick 5s, once you're out there, then the linebackers have to come in, and that leaves that area where the running backs are just releasing into that middle of the field area, and just that 5 yards down, that soft zone spot where, hey, now the linebackers have to come up. They might have been covering the running back a little bit, and that just leaves a little bit of a zone for Connor Johnson to drop it over the top of those linebackers. And I think
we've seen that exact same play out time and time again this year against the Rangers. And I think it's a high school defense killer of a play when you have a mobile quarterback rolling them out like that and releasing a running back. Because you put that linebacker in a very tough situation of, are you going to cover me and not give up a quick 5 yards? Or are you going to let me toss it right over your head to a waiting running back like Mac, who can make you pay for 30 yards?
Right. And Mac, one of Mac's big runs or big plays was a pass this week. And, that was a lot farther depth of target than just a little dump off, because Mac did a great job, following that ball and catching it, and then turning around and getting some extra yards. And that's just one of those things that, hey, now we got to cover him out of the backfield too. Like, it just adds to those things that maybe you're not looking at every week. Maybe the coach isn't looking at every week, but you're guaranteed that all of that film is going to have to be looked at by anybody we play in the playoffs. Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the game, when we did our players of the game, I had a trouble picking one player out, because like I said at the end of the broadcast, I think this was our first really well put together team game where we faced a little bit of adversity in the first half. Like, going into halftime, the last 2 games, it was quickly apparent that the starters probably weren't going to be playing the rest of the game. Going into halftime here against White Bear was 11-3.
Yeah.
So right there, you would want to go into halftime with a bigger lead when we're playing White Bear, but the guys came out, they didn't let that get them down, and they played as a team. Everybody filled their position and did what was asked of them when it was asked. And now we got 4 receivers all getting receptions. Mac leading the reception game with 4 for 52 yards and a touchdown. I just think as the season goes on, B-Scout's going to just concoct more and more ways to get playmakers the ball in different ways that aren't necessarily on film. And it's just going to be a fun regular end to the regular season and a fun beginning to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a name. Rayfield's not on there for the receiving. He had one that there was one over the middle that we just missed. That would have been a big play as well. So there's a number of big playmakers out there on this team.
Well, and Savageau also should have had a long one.
Yeah,
it should have been a touchdown.
And so, as far as you're going into a hostile environment, into the Bear Den on homecoming, it's 11-3 at halftime. You come out, and they just came out all cylinders clicking, and the defense came up with a big stop. And I think it was the second drive that it was the big stop in their territory, and then we just put a touchdown on them again, and then they did it again the very next drive, and then we put another touchdown right on them. So it was like we got a quick 14 points right after halftime.
Well, and that first big stop, I think, was kind of the nail in the coffin that sprung everything, because you get that big stop, we score right away, and then I think that they were kind of just at that point waiting for us to unleash, and the Rangers did, and the fourth quarter wasn't much of a game.
Right, and it was about that second drive. I think that second drive is when Brian White got hurt.
That too. Yep, that was.
And so
I was surprised to see him come back in.
Yeah.
Later on in the game after getting
it was kind
carried off the field.
Right,
by his
it was
teammates.
kind of a weird spot where I mean, even if he is back, that style of offense where you just dump it off, you couldn't have gotten enough points in that point. So you'd kind of want him to play, in weeks afterwards, rather than try and send him out that game.
And honestly, when Easton Mills came in replacement, he only got 4 carries, and 21 yards, but those carries looked very different than the way that Brian was running the ball.
Absolutely.
And I think I would have tried to kind of ride those coattails a little bit and see if that gives you any more energy, because they were just a different style of runner.
Right.
And I was surprised to see Brian come back in, honestly.
Yeah, Easton Miles was more of a scat back, just hey, I'm going to beat you to the edge. He was more of the Jurkovich build rather than the Durago build.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just trying to pound up the middle with Brian White. And, once we put Loomis came in a lot of those spots where they knew that they were going to be running up the middle, and he did a great job. He did a great job stacking Brian White up. Also, Anemasan had a couple of those that were pretty effective up the middle, but I mean, it was Brian White was definitely harder to bring down, and he got the pile moving forward, so he would get hit and then move the pile forward. But overall, I mean, White Bear they played a good game for their game plan, and played us tough for 2.5 quarters. The third quarter, it kind of went off the rails a little bit for them. They had a good game for their homecoming, and I mean, the amount of people that were at White Bear Lake,
that was insane.
And the amount of people from Forest Lake that drove there.
Yeah,
there was big thanks to the Ranger faithful out there that came in, and ton of the people in the student section with some of them had a bit questionable sayings on the front of their shirts, but yeah.
Quick shout out to the receiving crew for White Bear. I mean, we talked about, and we even talked about it during the game, but we talked about it last week, that the receivers weren't necessarily helping Tommy out a whole lot throughout the season with their hand skills. There were a lot of drop balls on Friday, but between, was it Antonio Brown and they had Byron White, which I think that Byron they messed up their stats, because Byron had, I think, 1 or 2 catches. but he had a handful of drops.
Yeah, he had.
But
and also,
to come up,
some of those drops were like super high balls that he got a hand
Brian
on.
got blown up on one of those plays going up for a ball that brought out a defensive foul. But I mean, I just wanted to say that it was crazy to see those guys make some pretty decent plays against our defense, and 2 of their 4 main starting receivers and the 2 starters are freshman receivers. Right. So I think that they got a pretty good receiving core coming up. Next year, it'll be the question of who do they pair with them at quarterback, because Animason will be gone after starting varsity for 3 years, which is a pretty great run. Do you got anything else for White Bear, or are you ready to move on?
No, big thanks to White Bear for allowing us to come into the Bear Den, bring you video from the Bear Den. It was a solid game.
Yeah. All right, moving on to a couple of scores around the league, and we will check in on where we're sitting here. So Forest Lake, currently in overall standings, is sitting number 5 in 6A behind Maple Grove, Minnetonka, Centennial, and Rosemount. Your Rangers have the highest point differential of any team in 6A right now, sitting at 29. I think it's a little disrespect. Well, obviously the standings is a little bit different because there's some actual statistical science that goes into the reason why we're sitting at 5. I think that they got us right in the polls, having us number 3 behind Maple Grove and Minnetonka, only because we are one of 3 undefeated teams left in 6A behind Maple Grove and Minnetonka. And Maple Grove and Minnetonka have had to play a harder schedule so far this season. Forest Lake, whether it's lucky or a disadvantage throughout the year, we've had other than Prior Lake week 1, I mean, Anoka scared us, but they haven't won a game yet this year. I believe they were in a shootout with Andover.
Yeah, that was a shootout. I thought they...
Andover won 62-61.
Yeah, that was
overtime.
So, a bit about that. So, we've been talking about why point differential matters. And in previous years, Forest Lake has always been in that, 4th or worse, seeding in the bracket.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really tough for people to realize and come to the understanding that, hey, Forest Lake is a really good team this year. I mean, other than, a couple of spots on Howie Johnson, the University of Minnesota recruit, other than a few spots like that, we're not really getting those, hey, you really got to watch this team, partially because, hey, guess what? When you're in that 4th through 6th spot in the bracket, you're not going to have that super tough schedule, and you're not going to be, you're not going to be, hey, it's us against Edina, because you're not going to have that super, super high-powered team as your extra game on your schedule, unless you're in that top portions of the bracket. So Forest Lake, I've said this many times, and you can only play who's on the schedule, and we're doing that in resounding fashion, and also we're catching teams at the right time. It's unfortunately Stillwater, who we will play the last game of the season. Their starting quarterback went down. And there's a number of things that happen that, hey, you might not get as much respect out of somebody like when we played Park. Their whole system was devoid of a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so again, you can only play who's on the schedule, but there comes to a point where you shouldn't be putting Rosemount in my opinion. I think that the Rosemount being ahead of Forest Lake is significantly, I think that was either an oversight or just a weird statistical anomaly on strength of schedule being played, because they've played quite a few close games, and they played Shakopee
Rosemounts had to play Centennial, Eastview, Prior Lake, Shakopee, and Farmington.
Yeah.
And so their close games came with Centennial, Prior Lake, and Shakopee. So they've had to play a fairly rough schedule so far. Prior Lake is the one that I feel like we all kind of feel bad for because
Prior Lake's gone through a gauntlet.
Yeah, Prior Lake played Force Lake, Egan, Rosemount, Minnetonka, and Lakeville North.
Yeah,
and they got to play Shakopee, Lakeville South, and Farmington to close out the season. But what I was gonna say about Force Lake and their record and where they're sitting for everything is to earn the respect in the polls. The thing that they are doing is the fact that when they play teams that they should easily beat, we're not playing them tight.
You're not playing down to their level.
I think when we played Anoka, they were coming off of a season that we played them week 2. They only had 1 loss, and they're coming off a season that they went to the championship. So you kind of had to respect Anoka.
Right.
And I think that in a weird way, we played down to them thinking they were going to be a harder opponent. But for the rest of the season that we've had, the teams that we should beat, we're beating, and we're beating in well-oiled fashion. It's kind of like Alabama when they've been in the top 10 for the longest with Saban. Half their schedule, they were playing nobodies, but they were blowing them out 70 to whatever. And that's how they kind of kept that respect and kept their ranking. And I think that that's something the Rangers need to do the rest of the season.
I'm going to push back on that Anoka game a little bit. That Anoka game was the first game that Mac was completely out.
Yeah, we were missing Mac.
That was a
makeshift.
Hey, let's see what works offense.
Yeah.
It was they played it a little bit. They played it a little bit conservative just because they kind of had to. We didn't know. Hey, we don't know who's going to be the main drivers of this offense yet. So we're going to play it a bit more conservative. And like some people could say that, hey, we should have blown them out by more. A win is much better than making a huge mistake and putting a big L on the board. And in that instance, I think that was definitely the right way to go about Anoka. And that game was closer than it appeared because it was an 8-point game with them having the ball, and the defense made a great stop.
Well, and the other thing with that Anoka game is it's not like Anoka is Park in the fact that they don't have a quarterback, they're missing, and they just don't have the talent right now. Anoka is still a good team. They played Eden Prairie, Forest Lake, Blaine, Osseo, and Andover. And other than Eden Prairie, week 1, they've all been within a score or 2 of, they're not getting blown out. So they're still a decent team. It's just high school football. This was one of the other points I was going to make earlier after the Anoka thing is regardless of who you're playing, it is hard to go undefeated an entire season, even with an easy schedule, just because it's high school football. Injuries happen. The ball bounces one way or the other. All of a sudden, Forest Lake has had 2 games this season that if the ball went the other way in a couple of situations, we could be sitting at 3-2 right now. So I think that right there should give Forest Lake the respect, and they deserve to be in the top 3. Because I've heard a couple of things about, is this Forest Lake team for real? I think we are. We're winning at a consistent pace, and the last 4 games we're winning by a large margin.
Yeah.
It has not been we were 3 points away from a 3rd shutout in a row against White Bear. So I think as long as they can keep that going throughout the East Ridge game, Mounds View, and into Stillwater, we should be good. To stay high up in the rankings and maybe even jump a place or 2 depending on who Maple Grove and Minnetonka play the rest of the season. Like you said, we're playing teams at the right time for us. Stillwater with their injured quarterback. Looking into this week now, Eastridge is without their starting quarterback and I believe without their starting running back. So we're playing an Eastridge team that would normally be a fairly decent program with 2 of their bigger players out. They've had to change up their offense a little bit. Last year they ran that wing tee that Elk River made famous. But they're running that completely now, and they're not passing as much as they did last year. They're trying to use the running backs that they have and run the ball. And they played White Bear a lot tighter than we did. So I think that Eastridge will be a bigger test for us just because that offense is confusing. I mean, last year, even our camera people did a great job of tracking that game, but there were more than a few times that we tried to get a replay up,
right,
and their offense just tricked the camera because there's 4 people in the backfield, basically. They could all get the ball at one time, and it's a lot of fakes and a lot of rollouts, and we'll get into that in a second. I'll run through a couple of scores here, and then we'll move on to the Eastridge game. But Maple Grove sitting at number 1 beat Moorhead 56-14. Tonka sitting at number 2 beat Eden Prairie 21-14. And then Woodbury, big storyline there. If you couldn't tell, a quarterback matters in a program. Stillwater coming into the season was primed to be a big test for Forest Lake, and Stillwater lost to Woodbury last week 28-13, who we blew out the week before. So,
and week to week,
everything changes. Like we just were talking about, high school football is high school football. I mean, football itself is football.
Right.
College football, I think it gets a little bit different because all the good players are going to want to go to the good schools, and it's a lot harder to get bigger upsets, but big upsets do happen on a weekly basis in college football.
Just the team not being ready. Something weird happening with the team right in front of the practice, in front of a game, something weird happening at practice, somebody not showing up, somebody not showing like he's into practice. Like, well, if he's not worried about it, then I guess I shouldn't be either. And the whole team kind of takes it off. And all of a sudden, when they figure out that they need to actually play to their potential, they're 3 scores down.
Yeah. Yep. But now we can start looking on to this week. Moundsview played Eastridge last week. Moundsview and Eastridge being our next 2 games. Moundsview after Eastridge. But Moundsview got out of there with the win, 21-0. So Eastridge coming off kind of a big loss. Yeah. The only crappy thing about our looking forward on this game is Eastridge is not a team that's very good with stats. So I jotted down a couple of points based on what has been recorded. They enter a lot of the team stats, but they don't enter much for the individual stuff, unfortunately. But right now what I got for talking points is Eastridge sits second behind us in the Metro East standings at 3-2. We're 5-0, so they are the second place team in our division. They got some pretty significant injuries to their quarterback and running game. Right now, we're currently averaging, after last week, 235 yards on the ground per game. Eastridge is averaging 168, which is not great when your entire offense is based around the run. And then that is even more prevalent in average passing yards. We're not really a huge passing team, but we do it effectively. We got 78 is what we average passing yards per game. They're down at 64. So I didn't think many teams had a lesser average than us until you get down the line in classes. But 6A wise, I think a lot more of those teams will. 6A, I think, on average, probably runs a bit more of a pro style offense, most of the teams. So there's more passing. But yeah, 64 yards average per game ain't great.
Well, it's not great. And the other thing is like you have to look at the number of attempts, which I don't know if you have the number of attempts per game for Eastridge, but like if you look at our number of attempts, the efficiency that Forest Lake does throw the ball falls back to the ability to run the ball. And with teams that are very effective at running the ball, you're not going to see many of those, just, hey, we got to pass it. It's more of the, hey, it's 2nd and 3. We can pass it. And that's, when big plays come up because, hey, you know what? Even if it's incomplete, we'll still run it 2 more times and get the first down.
Yeah.
So that's the thing where teams that are run first offenses, a lot of times their passing stats are fairly low because sometimes you might not get into that spot where you have basically a free play that you can, if you're sitting in that 2nd and 7 range a lot, you want to get in to a spot where, hey, a 5-yard run now where it's 3rd and 2. And if you're really confident in your ability to run, you might take that 3rd and 2 as a passing down and then run it on 4th and 3 and 4th and 2 if you don't get the first down or a big play out of it.
Yeah, Eastridge, another note on their passing, they've thrown for 1 touchdown so far this season, and they've got 3 interceptions. So for throwing it as little as they do and having 3 picks, not great. We have definitely thrown it more by 10. But right now we're at 47% completion percentage, and that's not
74.
even 74. And that's not even Connor's completion percentage because there's a couple in there from Alex that got mixed into that percentage. But 6 touchdowns on the year and no interceptions. We're doing a good job of not turning the ball over. I don't believe we've given up a fumble this year.
And there's been some that have been put on the ground, but I think we recovered.
We get back on them. Yeah. So Forest Lake not turning the ball over this year is huge. Yeah, I mean, this is the one crappy part of teams not entering player stats. We don't have a ton to talk about with these guys other than the fact that the Rangers are prepped for a game where they're going to be playing a backup quarterback, and hopefully instead of taking the week off of practice, Howie's out there leading the charge for that defense, saying we got a guy that another quarterback that's not used to being in this situation that we can take advantage of and hopefully add to that sack total as it keeps climbing throughout the year.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is like for this team to prove to everybody are they for real or not, you got to come out and hey, you know what? If you want to be planning on that second level of players coming in, in the second half, like, hey, we want to see who we got. We want to take care of business in the first half, and really come out and make a statement right away. And then start rotating those guys in, let them play a little bit because, come November, come the end of October and into November, bumps and bruises start to hurt a little bit more when it's cold.
Yeah.
Right now we've had really great weather.
And we've had great luck with injury.
We've had really good injury luck, knock on wood. So let's keep our guys fresh. Let's go and take care of business when we have to. And then also let's find some guys that can come in. Last week we really didn't. Last week it was pretty close most of the game, and I think that they didn't really want to let them open the door back up and wanted to keep that margin of victory in there. So we kept a lot of the starters in through the fourth quarter. I personally, if we can get one of those where we're up by 30, mid third quarter, I want to see those guys come in because I didn't get to give away my next man up award last week. I was a little disappointed in the change, but still, the offensive line played really great. I think that they were a mainstay of the ability to move the ball and get those big plays because they were moving on blocks. On those second level blocks, getting downfield and making some of those big plays possible. Also, the times that Connor Johnson did throw, he had plenty of time to throw.
Oh, yeah.
So they did a heck of a job, and I really look forward to seeing them do it against Eastridge. I really think that our inside runs have really gotten to be the go-to on being able to break one because the guards and the centers have been amazing at getting to the next level and just turning your guy just enough where you can squeak through. You don't have to, fully get a solid block on him, or just so you get enough, and they're trying to give you a little arm tackle. And Durago, guess what? He doesn't go down with arm tackles. So
No,
even if
he
he
does
touches you, sorry, just get in between. Like, you don't even have to get a solid block. Just be. And Durago's gotten a lot better at, hey, I know this cheek is pointed this way. That's where he's going. So it's a little bit more of a knowing to follow your blockers, and that just comes from time and repetitions. And Durago has got a lot of those when Jurkovich was out, so that makes him be a lot more efficient when he has to go through those. It's 3rd and 3, or second and 2 when you want that quick run, but he's going through looking at getting a first down and a lot more. He scored a touchdown on one of those last week where he gets a shot, and he knows that if he gets to the second level, that it's tough for them to bring him down in the open field.
Yeah, I mean, right here, kind of comparing the defenses together, just so you got an idea of who the Ranger, the Forest Lake Freightliners will be going up against. Our defense, we know, is a very good run defense. We're sitting at 37 tackle for loss on the season with 12 sacks unofficially, because
Last week's
the defensive stats did not get put in for last week, which those numbers I believe would probably skyrocket. We did
tackles for loss, yes.
Yes.
Tackles for a loss, yes. I believe there was 2 sacks that they will call sacks.
Yeah.
And it all depends, because if they think that he was going to run or pass it changes. Sometimes it's a sack and sometimes it's just tackle for a loss. But Howie should have one more sack if they're compiling it correctly. And Durago, I mean, not Durago, but I think Tomakung almost got another pick, which we're doing.
Westman almost had that pick.
Oh, yeah, that was
Westman came downhill and jumped in front of it and really picked it off.
So the defense has been doing a great job getting turnovers, getting tackles for losses, sacks. It's a big play defense. And, don't get down if all of a sudden, hey, they're giving up 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. Eventually that loss for 15, or that big penalty against them because they're holding.
The interceptions.
Which they're holding and the refs see it. Then that turns them back quite a bit. But that's just what this defense is built on. It's like, hey, bend but don't break. Even if they get to the 20 or the 30-yard line, they've still had those where, hey, they just drove 40 yards on us. Now they're at the 20-yard line. And then, boom, just negative play after negative play, and then they come up with a turnover on downs.
Yeah.
So
Forest Lake's defense, 37 tackles for loss, 12 sacks. Eastridge sitting at just about half of both with 12 tackles for loss and 6 sacks. So they've gotten some, but not quite to the number that Forest Lake's defense is. And I think that's the offense has got to be licking their chops looking at that stat line. And then another huge blow for Eastridge. I feel like we just keep going through things that Eastridge is missing from prior years other than their quarterback and running back, is the fact that Ryerson is no longer kicking either one of the brothers. And so they are down to 1 field goal attempted and 1 made from the 20 to 30 yard range. And nothing else. That stat line would have been huge in past years from the Ryerson brothers putting field goals in from 40, 50 yards out. They're both kicking for Minnesota now, or D1 programs at least. I don't exactly know where Grant's brother went, but you knew that 4th down was not all right, we can relax because they're not going to score any points. Like we've had that cushion for a couple of other teams, but now this year doesn't seem like they have the kicking game that they at once had.
I mean, let's face it, unless you're playing a lot of super close games, the kicking game is kind of moot point.
Correct.
Onwagu has done a great job kicking, and that's great. But until we start playing super close games, it's not a huge portion.
Correct.
As far as like something to really worry about.
Yeah.
What I see as more telling is the bottom stat, where they have 16 third down attempts and 13 third down conversions. So that's a situation where it seems like they're super efficient, and even their fourth down rate is 50%. They've attempted 6 and made 3. So this is definitely a team that, with that wing T offense, can hold the ball. Their time of possession was 56 minutes to 40 minutes against the opponents. So even though they have been playing a couple of teams that have gotten a lot of points against them, and this is one thing that Forest Lake's time of possession is more because our defense is out there, but we have big plays. And we've been putting up a lot of points with those plays. So our time of possession isn't nearly what it could be.
Correct.
Because, a lot of times we'll have a 4-play drive that went 60 yards, where a lot of other teams are going to need a 5-minute drive that's 12 plays to get 60 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, like we were talking, big play offense, they score fast. But we have seen a couple of times in closer games that when we need to get the offense out there and take an entire quarter off the clock, we've done it before.
Right. The Anoka game was a big one where we came out and we said, hey, if we can get a touchdown and take up half of the third quarter, we ended up taking like 8 minutes of the third quarter on that drive. So that's one thing that
we had one like that against Prior Lake as well.
Yeah.
Big, long. I think that's probably where a decent chunk of our time of possession came from, at just under 30 minutes. But yeah, I think as long as the Rangers execute the way that they have in the past couple weeks, I think that if we're getting into predictions now, I think I would write this one down again as the Rangers going 6-0. But again, that all comes down to execution.
Being ready to play
and game planning correctly for your opponent and not getting complacent. Because I think as the season goes on, when you're rolling like this, it's just as easy as it is to keep it rolling. It's also just as easy to have one bad week of practice and all of a sudden you just lost to a team who doesn't have a starting quarterback and running back. So I think the Rangers need to be very diligent in the next 3 weeks of preparing and playing their game the way that they play it, and not letting the opposing team dictate how they're going to conduct themselves on offense and defense. And I think a big thing is not letting tempers flare. We've had a couple throughout the season of missed time penalties on personal fouls, of just extracurricular stuff after it hasn't become a huge issue, so I'm not worried about it. But as coaches, I don't think players are really going to pick up on that a whole lot, but any coach that potentially sees or hears about that might get desperate enough to coach their team up on that a little bit, of like, a little extra something might cost the Rangers 5 or 15 yards if they get frustrated. But I don't see that being a big deal.
I think as this season goes on, this team has become significantly more focused as it comes. Because let's face it, this team has never had the situation that they have right now. Like this, since what, 80? Was it 91?
Yeah, somewhere late 80s, early 90s.
Since then, Forest Lake has never been taken super seriously as far as the rankings go.
Correct.
So this team, and even past years' teams, have kind of been like, oh, well, we're winning, but when's
the bottom going to drop out?
What's it going to get us? But this team, led by Howie Johnson, led by Connor Johnson, led by Johnson & Johnson, I think this team has leaders on both sides that are holding everybody else accountable. You also have a whole bunch of seniors that have played a lot of time, which is rare, because this is kind of the first run of, hey, these guys have been playing since they were freshmen, sophomores, and getting a lot of playing time as juniors, where that never happened in the previous years of Forest Lakes teams. So these guys have been putting in a ton of work for a ton of years and getting all of that experience, and all of that experience is leading up to what could be this year as one of the biggest years for Forest Lake. I fully expect them to be one of the top bracket holders, be playing a solid home game, actually 2 solid home games, and then a neutral site game. And then who knows? But this team looks like a team that is led by guys that keep their side of the ball in line. It's something that, and I've seen it, and Howie has been there and been ready to pull guys off of everybody, and basically about ready to get a penalty on our team, because he is that focused that he wants to, hey, we don't need a penalty here. You get back over there right now. And we've seen it multiple times. And there's a couple of things that we can't let them get our players to that level. Jurkovich has had a couple where warranted. Yes, they were a little rough. I get it. Later on, we can't have any retaliation in those situations.
It's always the second guy,
and it's always the guy you're retaliating against something that they've done, and they definitely hit him out of bounds at one time, and he just gave him a little shove.
And last week, somebody was definitely holding on to his pads well after the play was over.
Right.
And
so there's a number of things, but I know it sucks, but let the coaches handle that. Let's let the coaches handle that. And if the coach gets a penalty, he knows that he is doing it for a reason. And he had that that happened against Prior Lake, where, the coach saw something and, really was at the refs, and, as players, let the coaches coach and let them pick their spots and pick their battles. Don't pick them for them, because if we get in a hole, there's nothing we can do other than try and get out of it. And it's a lot harder to get out of it, so let's practice. Let's practice on not letting things bother us as much as they used to, and that team that is physically strong, which we are, our offensive line is doing a great job. Our defensive line is doing a great job. Our linebackers are coming up and making huge plays, open field tackles that are super strong. We need to be mentally strong. And, a lot of those penalties that you don't even think about, and it's just the heat of the moment. But that's where the mental strength comes in, and that's what this team needs to build on as we get deeper into October and November.
I could not agree with you more. I've been saying it all season that season is bank or bust. To me, that's kind of the way that I've been. Whenever somebody asks me, "How's Forest Lake looking this year?" That's usually how I respond: is bank or bust this year.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of guys that I run into at work, and they're always asking, "Hey, how are they doing? How are they doing?" They're like, "Oh, really?" It's surprising that Forest Lake is doing that well, and that's one thing that this team needs to do. Don't listen to all of that stuff. What's happened in the past doesn't matter. This season is a new season for everybody. Every program is a new team this year, no matter who it is, and every program always changes every year. This program right now, if they focus, could be one of the best programs that Forest Lake has had in recent memory, and easily maybe even ever. And especially playing the talent that you will have to play in November. There's a lot of good schools out there, and there's a lot of transfers that have come in. to bigger schools, Forest Lake has to play with what we got, and we got some of the best. So I'm not too terribly worried about all those other transfers that have gone places. This team has guys that are willing to step up, has guys that are behind our starters that are very good. We're solid at running back. We're solid at linebacker. We're solid in receivers. And our corners actually started to look like we had a little bit of depth too. And our corner play from this year to last year, night and day difference. Our corners are playing tough, physical ball. They're turning their head. They're not getting those crazy penalties.
Not getting beat deep.
And if they do get a penalty, hey, you know what? Probably should have got one because he knew he was behind me and I'm taking the penalty rather than getting beat deep, which I will 100% say that taking the penalty there is always better than having a free, easy touchdown get scored on you, because not only does that change the momentum, change the score, but it also changes the momentum, which is really tough to sway back, especially if you let a team that doesn't think they have a shot in and give them a big play. Now all of a sudden they really think that they got a good shot to win, and like you don't want to let that happen. And so we talk about penalties, and there's right spots to take penalties, and those are, I think our corners have done a great job at, hey, this guy can't get behind me. It was 2 weeks ago, Tamakung's penalty that looked like it was pretty clean, but you can't let him go there, because that is 100% caught if he doesn't.
Yeah,
and
at the 5, and who knows, fighting through the tackle if he winds up in the end zone or not. So
those are the kind of penalties that I'm talking about. Good penalties that, hey, you know what? If he's got a step on you, you're not going to be a step in front of everybody all the time. You can't do it. It's just not possible. And so you need to take those spots, and hey, if he's behind you, if you're close enough and you can, that's when getting a little physical downfield is definitely warranted. But the ball skills of Tamakung, Westman are really starting to show on defense, where they're reacting to the ball. Westman came over he was covering another guy and saw that the ball was going to another receiver in the area, but he let his guy go because he knew where the ball was, and he actually had a really good shot to make the interception. So I am definitely looking for Forest Lake to take advantage of the slower paced running of East Ridge and really make that a detriment. Like, oh, you want to just try and run 5 yards a piece on us and see if you can win that way?
Yeah. I
don't think it's possible. I do think that East Ridge will score more points than White Bear scored on us. I don't think that this is going to be the under 10 points game for Forest Lake. They're probably going to be in the 17 to 20 range, and Forest Lake is going to have to be in the 20 to 30 range to win the game. I was wrong last week as far as my over-under number. My worst week ever. I missed it by 22 points.
Something like that.
Yeah. But no, I missed it by 20 points. Which was my worst week ever. I was running it around the average of 3. Average of 3 points. But this week, I am going with 51 as my number. Over-under number. I do believe that it is going to be a closer game. I do believe that the boys are going to have to show up and get ready to really set the edge. And our linebackers are going to have a real problem finding out who's the one that's going to take the ball out of this wing T. So they're going to have to stay home, which they've done a great job. And I fully expect them to be up to the task. However, I think that they probably will get about 140 yards of rushing on us. That is one thing that this Forest Lake defense has had some issues with, is giving up a lot of rushing yards. Now, it hasn't really equated to a lot of points for the opponent, but I think that if they try and play the time of possession game, they're going to be sitting on their back foot and they're going to lose a lot of ground. So I fully expect Forest Lake to win in a closer game. And I believe, So
I'm going to go
that's
the
what
other way to close it out. I'm going to go the other way. I think Forest Lake, if they show up and play their game, I think we handily beat these guys again. And I'm going to go with... I'm going to give them... I think Eastridge is probably the team that's best suited to score points against us right now. So I think I'm going to go right around 12 to 35. That's where I'm going to lock in.
Okay.
I got a feeling that these boys are just going to want to keep on rolling, and the momentum is just going to keep on coming with us.
So the difference in points you basically just took away from Eastridge and gave.
Yes. Yep.
So
I think your overall total is pretty close, but I just think Forest Lake wins it a little bit more handily if they come out and play the way that they've played the last 4 weeks.
yeah, and I believe the weather should be fine. I have not looked at a weather report.
I believe it's
for
supposed
tomorrow.
to be hot.
The boys should be ready to play.
88 degrees and partly cloudy. So it's going to be
The warmest game of the season.
you're going to have to stay hydrated to not
Warmest
cramp up.
game of the
That's gonna
season,
be that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, so definitely be putting them salts in and
Staying hydrated.
staying
throughout the day.
hydrated early in the day.
Start the day before. Start today.
Yeah, start today.
You should have started this morning.
Right. So yeah, that's my thoughts for the game. I think it should be a great game, and I hope to see y'all out at Ranger Stadium.
Last home game of the season, so
And it's going to be a beautiful night. It's going to be a little warm. We do have shade on that side, so
when the sun starts to go down,
sun starts to go down. It's
cool
going
off,
to be
and you got the shade.
got to cook the. We'll cook the Eastridge folks over there a little bit for first hour. You know when they're getting ready. So kickoff is at 7, so it'll just be. I think the sun will just be going down on the opposing bleachers just as the game starts. So if you're tuning in from Eastridge, come on in. You should have a fine time and shouldn't be cooking too hard, even if it's hot. So, but you can always catch us on Lakes Area TV. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that bell. It'll tell you when this podcast goes live. Also, when we're going live for each home broadcast. And now
And
a
away
lot of the away broadcasts with the goodness of other teams that have been gracious enough to allow us to come in and set up.
Yeah. All right.
I'm Joel Geist.
No Casa. We'll see you tomorrow.
Go
Can't
Rangers.
wait for this one. Go Rangers.